Alright, so this is going to be a tutorial on how to use configurations for the structures team. And for this, I want you to try and practice making a vertical stabilizer for a plane. So for this, you're going to want to start with something that looks like this, what I have here. So basically what I did is I just took the dimensions. Mine is going to be a little different than what I give you, but you have some, base chord or root chord. You have some tip chord, and then you have some height here or length. So you just kind of create this shape to reflect that, and then you kind of just want to decide how far apart your ribs are going to be. Typically what I do for that is I just kind of pick a number. So for this one I divided this into 4 pieces. So I just said like 12.5 divided by 4, and I got this number here, and so I just set a line at each interval along that number, and so this is going to be kind of my blueprint for where my ribs are going to go. You don't have to do it exactly like that. Typically I just try to pick a number so that the ribs end up somewhere between 3 to 4 inches apart. So yeah. And then basically you're going to also want to have, well, you already start with this, so you're going to have an airfoil shape. And you want to set this up so that you can change the chord length however you want. So basically you just have a line here, and you want to just have a smart dimension from one tip to the other. And make sure that you can change it. So for example, if I change this to 10, the whole thing will just shrink, and it doesn't do anything weird. So just have that set up. And so basically, to start with configurations, you have your base piece, and you want to go over here and click this tab that says Configuration Manager, and it has these like little tree thing with the 2 cubes. So you come over here. This is going to be your default configuration. Usually it'll say default, but I've renamed mine to V1 for vertical 1. So this is what I'm on currently. This is what I'm looking at. If you right click here, you can go to add configuration, and it gives you this menu. So let's say I want to make the next one. I can do I'll make the top one, so I'll do V5 because there's going to be 5 ribs total for vertical 5. And now we can open this up. We go into edit sketch. You can see this is still the same thing, but for this one I know the topmost rib is going to be 8 inches, I believe, in chord length. So you can come in here and say, okay, that's going to be 8 inches. And then you'll see this little menu here that says configurations. And if you click that, you'll get these different options for this configuration, all configurations, or specify configurations. And so this one is going to be unique. So I'll just say this configuration will be 8 inches. So I just go hit OK. And so now you can see it's changed. And now if you go back to our initial one, if you I have to exit the sketch. If I open that up, you can see it's changed. If I edit the sketch, you can see this one is still 11 inches. And so essentially you can have different sized parts that are all part of the same file. And I'll show you how that can be very beneficial in just a second here. Alright, so I've done a little bit since last time, and essentially what I've done is I went ahead and created each specific configuration. So we have V1 through V5. I've also added a little construction line here just to make it easier to mate with our outline. And I'll show you here what I did. So essentially I've just mated each one of these to our little outline here. And I also set each one of these to their respective configuration. So essentially how you do that is you just right click on them, and you have this little menu at the top, and you can just select whichever one you want. So this is going to be the second piece, so V2, and so on. You can see this is V3. You get the point. I actually showed you this, or I meant to show you this earlier, but I screwed it up and don't feel like undoing it just to redo it all again. So essentially that's how you do it. You just right click, and you can select whichever configuration you want this piece to be. So now we can actually start changing these. So currently these are all 11 inches still. So the way you change them is you probably want to go back to the individual part file. I haven't figured out a way to change them in the assembly. But you go back here, you want to go to your configurations tab, and you might have to do a little bit of math for this part basically. So let's actually go back to here, and let's look at this piece. So we know there's going to be a 3-inch decrease, right? So this starts at 11 inches and it decreases to 8. So it decreases 3 inches, and it does that across 4 different ribs, right? So it starts 11, it goes down 1, goes down 2, down 3, down 4. And so essentially what you want to do is you just divide the distance that it decreases by the number of ribs. So 3 divided by 4, which is 0.75. So each of these ribs is 0.75 inches shorter than the last, is what I'm trying to get at here. I know that may sound confusing. That's all you need to take away. So what that means is basically we can use that knowledge to change the length of each one of these. So the first one, V1, is going to be 11, so we don't need to change that. We can open up V2. You just open it by double clicking. You come over here to the sketch. And so this one is going to be just 11 minus 0.05. And if you didn't know this, you can do math in Solidworks in the dimension feature. So 0.75. And actually, I'm going to set this up so we do, this is going to be the first one, so it's just 1 times 0.75. And I'll copy this, and we can just paste this and change that number. So that's going to be that. And we want to make sure it's set to this configuration. We only want this one to change. If for some reason you wanted all of them to change, you could do all configurations, or you could specify. So we're just doing this configuration. Click that, just hit OK. Now that'll change to the length that we want it to be. So now you can go ahead and make sure you exit the sketch, or it'll get real angry at you. You can go back into your assembly here, and you can see that piece has now changed. So look at that. It's perfectly the right length that we need it to be. So essentially, we just keep doing that for each one of these. This can be a little tedious. Open this up. This is why I copied and pasted that. So you just paste that in. This is going to be the second one, so 2 times 0.75. Just go ahead and hit enter. Make sure you also have this configuration selected. I forgot to look at that, but it was already selected, thankfully. Once again, we can go back here and look at our assembly, and that one has also changed. So I'll just go ahead and show you how to do all of these. So now we're on to V4, open sketch, change the dimension, paste. This is going to be, what, the third one? Oops, I want to click that. Come on. Numero 3. There we go. All done with that, exit sketch, and V5. And I just know that's going to be 8, so I'm just going to do that. Alrighty, so now that should be everything. We can go ahead back to our assembly. And now we have a perfectly tapered airfoil. Okay, so essentially everything that I just showed you is kind of just the setup for really the meat of using configurations. Basically all of that really, if that's all you did, it wouldn't really be saving that much time, opposed to just creating 5 different parts. But what I'm going to show you here is what really makes configurations so useful. So essentially what we want to do is we want to have a leading edge spar along here. We want to have a cutout for a carbon fiber rod that goes vertically through here. And then we also want to clip the back end just so that we can have I guess a rudder in this case, because this is going to be the vertical piece. And so essentially what we want to do is we want to cut a little square hole here. We want to cut a round hole somewhere in the middle, and we just want to cut a big square hole off the back here. So basically just pick one of your pieces. I'll just start on the top so it's easier to see. You want to make sure you go to edit part, and then you can go to sketch. If you hit sketch first, you'll be sketching in the assembly. That is if you're doing it in your assembly. So you want to make sure you edit part first. Then you can sketch here. So essentially I'm just going to kind of do a rough version here. So we want to have a kind of rectangular cut there. We want to have a big rectangular cut on the back there. And then we want to have a circle somewhere around there. Okay, so I say this will be, our spar is 1 inch thick. This will be half that, so 0.5. And of course all our pieces are 1/8, so 1/8 thick like that. And then we'll do like that and that, and hold on, like that. So at that point, make a midpoint so that it just aligns it there. Next we'll do this. Same thing here. I'll just start with the midpoint, so make that midpoint. For the rudders, I believe it'll be 3.4 inches. So that's what that'll be. And then we just want to make it wide enough that it will cut that whole piece, and there won't be any little bits left on the edges there. So I'll make that 1 inch. For this, let's just make it 0.25 for now. I think that fits pretty well. It doesn't really matter for this one. And so basically now what we have to think about is how these are kind of defined. So for this piece here, this is going to be cut out on the leading edge of each of these. So it's going to be here for this one, then it's going to be right here, right here, right here, and so on. So we want to define this as being attached to the leading edge, which it is. And so this is fine here as it is. Same goes for this one. This is going to be attached to the trailing edge. This is already defined as being attached to that. So even though, well, currently it doesn't really matter because this is just going to be straight anyways. But for example, if we had another taper on the back here, we want to define it so that it's attached to that back point. Now for our circular cutout here, we want this to, we want to have a vertical rod that goes all the way through. So this has to be, aligned all the way through. Now luckily our back end is also going to be just, completely vertical, so we can define it just based on our trailing edge here. So we can do that. Let's just go 6 inches, that's a nice distance. So now everything should be defined how we want it basically. So now you can go ahead and cut this, make sure it's the right distance. Cut that like that. And boom. That should be how that piece looks. You can see, you got your leading edge cut for that spar, you got this circular cut for that carbon fiber rod, and then this big cut at the back for your rudder. So now we can go back into the part file, and we want to apply this feature to each of our configurations. And so you can see we're on V5 here, and we have that cut. If we go to V4, that cut isn't here yet. So to basically make it so we have that, we have to go back to here, and you can see this is the cut here that we want to select. So basically just right click that, and you can go to unsuppress and just go ahead and click that, and as you can see now that cut has appeared. If we go back to our assembly here, you can see it has appeared, and it is exactly how we want it. You can see this has aligned with the front, and the back cut here and the circular cut are both vertically aligned. So if you look at it from the top, you can see straight through that hole there, and that's exactly how we want it to be. So essentially this is a little bit tedious here, but you can just go to each one of these configurations and just go ahead and unsuppress that feature. So I'll just go ahead and do that real fast. Unsuppress and unsuppress. Alrighty, now if we go back to our assembly, you can see there's a hole vertically through every single one of those. There's a piece cut off the back for the rudder, and there's a little slot for a leading edge spar. So essentially that took 2 minutes to do with configurations. If you didn't set this up with configurations, you would have to go into each one of these individually and reproduce this cut and dimension it and everything. And so for making more complicated assemblies like this, configurations can really help you save lots and lots of time. So that's why I wanted to teach you guys how to use these.